Now that we've looked at verses 1 through 12 of James chapter 4, let us finish the chapter with verses 13 to 17. And it reads, "Come now, you who say today or tomorrow we'll go to such and such a city, spend a year there, buy and sell, and make a profit. Whereas you do not know what will happen tomorrow. For what is your life? It is even a vapor that appears for a little time and then vanishes away. Instead, you ought to say, if the Lord wills, we shall live and do this or that. But now you boast in your arrogance. All such boasting is evil. Therefore, to him who knows to do good and does not do it, to him it is a sin." I love James as he finishes this chapter because he talks about how so carelessly sometimes we can talk about what we're going to do tomorrow or next week or next month or next year. Now, make no mistake, we as believers and sensible people ought to plan. You have to plan for the future, but yet at the same time, we must be very careful to know that the future is not promised. And what James is simply saying is, we should say, instead of saying, I'll see you tomorrow, or next week I'm going to do this, what we should first say is, if it's the Lord's will, we'll see you tomorrow. Or if it's the Lord's will, we would like to do this next week. Otherwise, James says it could be seen as boasting. Do we not realize that we could be here today and gone the very same day? As a pastor, unfortunately, I've had to console many families who've lost loved ones unexpectedly. And it's always a sober reminder that every day is a gift, that no day is promised, and we should make the most of every opportunity while we're still here on the earth. James goes on to say in verse 14, "For what is your life? It is even a vapor." Even if we live a long time, it's still, in the whole grand scheme of things, not really long at all. Our lives come and go, and how quickly can time fly by. So we should make the most of every opportunity that we have. And we should be mindful that if we are alive, it's only because of God's grace and will that allows us to be here. So we should say, if it's the Lord's will, we'll do this, or if it's the Lord's will, we'll be able to do that. Otherwise, we're boasting unnecessarily about what we plan to do without consulting God. Now, in the midst of all of that, and he's talking about not bragging about tomorrow, but being careful to keep the Lord in our conversations, the last verse of chapter 4 is very interesting. It almost doesn't seem like it goes there, but it's there for a very important reason. It says in verse number 17, "Therefore to him who knows to do good and does not do it, to him it is sin." In other words, it is disrespectful and disobedient to God when we know what we're supposed to do, and yet we still choose not to do it. There's no other reason than pride as the reason as to why, when we know what we're supposed to do, and yet we still don't do it. Pride is what keeps us distant from God. Pride is what tells us I know better than God what's best for my life. And it is also the reason why James spent so much time talking about being humble and humility as opposed to pride. Because pride says, I already know, I've been told, I've read it in his word, I've heard it in church, other people have told me, and yet I'm still going to do this my way. To him who knows what to do and chooses not to do it, to him it is a sin. Let us not be so disrespectful to God. There are times where we know what we're supposed to do. Our conscience pricks us every now and again. And we may say it's the conscience, but sometimes it's really the Holy Spirit nudging us, telling us, no, that's not the direction you should go. And sometimes we already know what we're supposed to do before we even do it. Let us be more sensitive to God in those moments, and let us not brag about tomorrow, because tomorrow is not promised. Wow, so today we've covered James chapter 4 in its entirety. Again, this video is not intended to go into depth, but to give you just enough that will whet your appetite, that will cause you to want to go back and reread it and study it some more. Hope you've enjoyed today's Bible study. Stay tuned for James chapter 5 for the next video. Until next time, be blessed.